Welcome to Fintech Uncut, the quiz show with candid commentary on the biggest fintech and financial services news of the week that was. Disclaimer: this show is created purely for entertainment purposes and contains segments of sarcasm, satire, parody, and humor. Even if you don't think any of it is funny, the creators do not accept any responsibility or liability for the accuracy of any content shared and reminded you to always fact-check everything yourself. And now, it's over to your quiz master.
Welcome to Fintech Uncut, the quiz show with candid commentary on the week's biggest fintech and financial services stories with the wise guy, the other guy, and Judge. Yeah, that is right, Judge Mary. Welcome back, everyone. I cannot wait to see how sharp you guys are to kick off episode 21 already. And my name is Goldman, the host of the day, eager to know who will win this week's quiz, Chris, the wise guy Skinner, or Andrew, the other guy Forster. And that decision will all depend on our Judge Mary. It's a rather philosophical quiz this week. So let's kick off with a first question. Every cloud has a silver lining, they say. It became a strikingly relevant statement this week. Why is that?
Surely that must be related to cloud computing. So maybe it's about Currency Cloud, who were recently acquired by Visa. They're friends of mine, and basically they spoke at the Innovate Finance Global Summit this week in London and said bad guys will always try and find avenues to get around the traditional banking systems, but luckily there are businesses out here which have compliance at the top of their agenda. So is it something to do with cloud and anti-money laundering and such like?
Oh, that's a far more intelligent answer than mine, Chris. I was going to say over here in the UK, we have a dark cloud of tourists that have descended on us for the coronation this weekend. But the silver lining is that we've got a bank holiday on Monday. So,
yeah, it's always holiday somewhere in May. It's unbelievable.
Does anyone care about a new king?
You talk about it every week.
I thought it was King Musk.
Really, Chris.
I got it in first. King Musk. There we go.
Well, I mean, talking about silver linings and that, you know, we've had nothing but doom and gloom and talking about banking failures and collapses and that. But Boston Consulting Group and QED Investors released a new report this week called the Global Fintech 2023. It's basically the future of fintech. And they're predicting that revenues from the fintech sector globally are going to grow sixfold by 2030. To equal somewhere in the region of $1.5 trillion annually. And in their words, fintech is only in chapter 2 of their story. So they're predicting a massive growth and runway forward for fintech. So F you to everybody.
I'm really keen to hear how they made those calculations because it's based on historical figures. They get it wrong.
No, you just put your finger in the air and guess. That's what most analysts and consultants do. If you talk,
there's finfluencers that do a similar kind of a thing. I think I saw a story about a famous finfluencer this week. Chris?
What?
Which story, Andrew?
This got nothing to do with Chris's article on the failure of First Republic and what JP Morgan gets out of it. Chris, you're going to
that was very cloudy, and there was a silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, JP Morgan's had a sweet deal here where they're acquiring a very comfortable bank that helps their wealth management strategy, because First Republic is the bank of nearly all the gazillionaires like Mark Zuckerberg in West Coast America. And so you know, they've already said they're going to make $500 million profit straight away. But to put that in context, JP Morgan made $42 billion of profit last year. So 500 million is just a ripple in the ocean. But having said that, it's really going to assist them in leveraging the private banking wealth management strategies that they've got in place, which actually is probably the weakest area in JP Morgan's portfolio until First Republic was acquired.
How much did they pay for them?
I think they were given it, weren't they? Near
Uh-huh.
enough. Although they had structured a deal for, I think it's about $30 billion to be invested in First Republic before the bank run caused a failure. But it's interesting because we've had Signature Bank, Silver Lake Bank, Silicon Valley Bank. There's now a run on PacWest. It just seems like all the banks on West Coast America are failing. And it's not just the banks. I mean, I was reading this week in the San Francisco Chronicle that Nordstrom and others are closing down their high street mall operations in San Francisco. So it seems like suddenly there's a huge depression around West Coast and Silicon Valley and San Francisco, which it ain't going to go away, folks, for a while. But Mary, have you picked up any of that news?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Nordstrom thing too. I know people seem a bit disenchanted with San Francisco, but yes, the West Coast banks, especially the ones for the tech companies, are, it's not great. But question for you or Andrew, for those customers that are now Chase customers, do they stay? Like how weird is it for the customer that now has a new bank, if it's weird at all?
Well, I'll give my quick take on that one, and then Andrew can jump in. But there's been a massive friction between Wall Street and Silicon Valley for the past decade or more, and so much so that quite a few of the West Coast large companies like Facebook didn't want to IPO on Wall Street. They were looking at alternatives because they don't like the sort of attitude of traditional bankers. And so, yeah, I think some of First Republic's younger clients will move to alternatives, but the question is, what alternative? Robinhood?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that in terms of, I think they were at First Republic because they didn't like the establishment type of a thing. But now there's very few alternatives for them to go to. However, is that possibly, we were talking about Apple last week, is that possibly where Apple increasing its banking services, will they slowly start going higher and higher up the chain, and how much will people perceive that to be Apple or Goldman Sachs? Because at the end of the day,
it's a completely different model. Apple is still daily banking, and it's maybe for lower value customers. There could be in the far future an investment opportunity, but these high wealthy customers, they need personalized services, and it's not going to be solved by a big tech like Apple. Not anytime soon.
Not yet.
But what it made me wonder, how long Chris, but also me actually, are going to keep saying that all these cases are unique cases and it's not affecting the entire industry.
Well, I don't think it's affecting the entire industry, basically because these are each unique instances of bank runs caused by the Fed increasing interest rates. There is a rumor, however, one headline this week, that half of American banks are going to be insolvent. And obviously, if that happens, you do have a structural systemic issue taking place.
Yeah. Anyway, next question.
No points.
No points.
Yeah,
Chris?
Points make prizes. I want my prize.
Chris won this round, clearly. Chris, 7 points. Andrew, 3.
Mary, do you know who won yet last week?
I believe you won, Rick, although you set me up for a tension question.
All right, next question. A similar yet stronger saying than the one in question 1 goes, de een zijn dood is de ander zijn brood. And indeed, that is Dutch. Ask Google Translate and you get one his dead, the other his bread. And although that is English, it probably doesn't mean much, since the correct translation is their loss, your gain. How does that fit in this week's news, according to me?
I think Chris has just actually touched on it in his previous answer, because he was talking about an article claiming that about half of America's 4,800 banks are technically or potentially insolvent on paper. And in the last 24 hours, we have seen PacWest, Pacific Western, not to be confused with Westpac, the Australian bank. But we've seen PacWest shares drop by 50%. So if we have a look and say that, JP Morgan have benefited out of their recent acquisition, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for acquiring smaller banks, maybe a bit of consolidation. Potentially, are we going to see a consolidation right down to just a handful of banks in America anytime soon?
And whose game would that be?
The big institutional banks of today.
You're getting closer.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think it'd be the customer's game,
Yep.
but the more consolidation that goes on, the less the customer's likely to have a gain. So it's the customer's lost, the bank's gain. And in fact, your translation, one is dead and the other is bread, I thought might have been related to the coronation of King Charles because of Diana and Camilla. But that's
One is dead there. But if we're talking about, their loss, your gain, is this anything to do with global investment banking firm? And I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this properly. Moelis, Moelis. They've just hired 11 ex-Silicon Valley bankers into their technology investment banking team. So literally taking Silicon Valley Bank's loss of 11 bankers is their gain.
You are getting really, really close.
Really close.
I reckon, you mentioned Silicon Valley Bank, so maybe it's to do with HSBC, who for a pound got Silicon Valley Bank's UK operations and assets, which they've declared has increased their first quarter profits by $1.5 billion. And they're just doing their AGM today. And what's interesting is that they've got lots of issues. They're trying to sell their Canadian banking operation for $10 billion, which looks like it probably will go back to next year. They made a $12.9 billion profit in first quarter, which is pretty amazing, boosted by the $1.5 billion from Silicon Valley Bank's acquisition. But they're being really highly pressurized by Ping An, which is the massive insurance group in China, to split up basically into HSBC Asia and HSBC rest of the world, because they're saying Ping An, which is their major shareholder, that all the profits that HSBC makes are coming out of Asia, and their losses are all coming out of Europe and the rest of the world. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So basically, their acquisition for a pound has turned into a 1.5 billion potential profit. Well, on paper,
buy that.
Potential profit at this stage.
Well, I'd buy £2.
But I'll better you on that one, Chris, because actually that's chump change if you compare it with UBS's announcement. So UBS's acquisition of Credit Suisse, which is due to be completed next month, they bought Credit Suisse for a book for $3.25 billion, and it has a book value of $60 billion. Now, according to a lovely accounting principle known as negative goodwill, they are able to write up that as a profit for buying an undervalued company, and they are going to record up to 57 billion in profit in the quarter, the biggest ever profits in history for a bank in a quarter.
Loss, your gain.
Exactly. So leaving HSBC's chump change.
I'm going to go and buy a bank. Just get out there, buy a bank that's hard up for a pound.
Well, there's a couple of thousand of them in the US apparently.
Exactly.
Let's stay with us for 20 minutes longer before you start looking for a bank, Chris, because I have more questions. But first,
Points. Chris won that round 8. Andrew, I like that other information, so I still gave you 5. Chris is in the lead.
So guys, I'm gonna tell you something. I did some research and I found 4 signs of a wolf in sheep's clothing this week. First one is they love power in themselves. This leader will try to gain and hold on to power for their own selfish reasons. They refuse correction and respond to criticism with anger. They use emotions to get what they want, and they lack the fruit of the spirit. What fintech news item this week revealed a wolf, according to these principles?
It has to be surely Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, who we all know from the film with Leonardo DiCaprio, and did this scam of a pump room for penny cent stocks in the 1990s, got sent to jail for it. But what you may not know is that he's now making over $100 million in assets. His net worth has gone massively through the roof by investing in cryptocurrencies and non-fungible tokens and real estate. So is it related to his investments?
Well, no, unfortunately, I didn't know that news either, so I couldn't make the question.
Oh, you asked for a wolf. That is the wolf.
Well, I was going to say there's a wolf in common that people may not be aware of. First Republic, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank. They all had one thing in common that isn't spoken about that much. They all had KPMG as an auditor.
Oh.
That's a wolf. It's got to be a bit of
I didn't know that.
Investigate. Yep. Apparently, the regulator's now taking a closer look. All three of those, some of the three biggest collapses, all had KPMG as an auditor. They're not your former employer, are they, Rick? I know you work for one of the big four. Okay.
No. That was my wife.
You have to realize that KPMG stands for Killing Primary Markets Grumpily. So there we go. I don't think you're on target because Rick hasn't given you the thumbs up. So maybe, Andrew, it's about UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who could be seen as a wolf in sheep's clothing, in that he launched a strategy recently to make the UK the crypto hub for the world. And then this week launched a new fraud strategy saying that all calls related to financial products, particularly those on cryptocurrency, will be banned. So I don't know where he sits.
I don't know either, but I know you're not sitting close to the answer.
Oh, thanks.
Burn.
I reckon it's ChatGPT that's the wolf. There's so many deep fakes going around at the moment, and ChatGPT, and talk about AI killing jobs, and there's even a AI ChatGPT created, directed, and produced movie released on YouTube, where Elon Musk actually saves the day at the end of the day. I got him in there.
I beat you. I got King Musk in at the start.
You did.
But no, that's not the right answer. And,
we need a clue, Rick.
Mary.
I think we need a clue.
Okay. It's a topic that we have discussed quite a few times, and I think none of us are really a big fan of that financial product that we're talking about.
Buy now, pay later.
Oh yeah. Well done, Chris.
Except that I am a fan of that product.
We all look at him with suspicion.
Well, the reason why I'm a fan of buy now, pay later, and you say we've just talked about it before, and we're not a fan. Maybe you're not a fan. Maybe Andrew's not a fan. Maybe Mary's not a fan. But I've known Klarna for almost 20 years. I think they're an amazing, innovative company, and it's all about the data and the data and analytics that go around the product. Now being copied by everybody, including Apple, because you've got Apple Pay Later now. And I'm also an ambassador of Innovate Finance, and they had
conflict of interest.
Well, they've launched a lobbying against the UK government's rules related to the buy now, pay later sector, saying that the measures are far more difficult than those that apply to credit cards, which are actually, if you look at the credit card industry, more damaging to a lot of people than buy now, pay later. I think the question is, and this is what ministers are struggling with, not just in the UK, but across all parts of the world that has buy now, pay later, is does it suck the customer into spending more without realizing the implications? And I think the answer to that is, do we really think consumers are that dumb?
Yes. Yes. No, overwhelmingly yes.
The problem with buy now, pay later is that it's promoted as a convenient payment mechanism, and credit cards has credit in the name. So you avoid some of the confusion. That means that buy now, pay later needs to be more explicit in the potential risks. And that's something that means that you get less seamless in your process, because otherwise you can't communicate that to the end customer.
I'm sort of doubtful, because I actually think buy now, pay later is just a very convenient thing for merchants and consumers to use to consume online, and it doesn't get them suckered into long-term high percentage rate credit card deals.
If they are capable of paying on time.
True. I mean, it's a little bit like the old payday loan firms. Yeah. I mean, Mary, I'll be interested in your view, because payday loans and buy now, pay later, are they both together, or do you see them differently?
I see them differently, but I think the thing with the buy now, pay later is, you know, people who are stacking it a bit like lose track of what's due and when. And there isn't a really good tool to manage that. So I think that's a problem. And then the inability to build credit history, I think that's still often the case. So these are the two things I worry about. But also there are studies that show that, you know, it's the people really struggling with their money that are using this. So that automatically just makes me nervous about it. What's lurking there. But payday loans, that's a super trap. It's nightmare.
I have to admit, I've never been a fan. I've been quite vocal about not being a fan of buy now, pay later when it's irresponsible, because I do think that if you need to use buy now, pay later to buy your £10 Subway sandwich, you have a serious problem, because that's a nice to have, not an absolutely must have, and you're putting that on 3 equal installments or maybe 6 equal installments for a sandwich. And as Mary said, loan stacking and things like that. So
Andrew, like in my cases, or my local taxes.
Yeah, paying your local taxes as BNPL. I mean, there's a number of things where I think that Klarna started out in the right direction, but people have sullied that model. They've taken the model and they've made it something else. But I had a long conversation last week with a product manager from a company called Laybuy, which is an Australian company, Kiwi company, I think. Sorry, I can't remember which one they are now. They're going to kill me. They are Kiwi. They're from New Zealand originally, launched in the UK.
If they do, Andrew, I hope they do it after May 16 when you join us in Brussels for the Banking Scene Conference.
But they
Show note.
yeah, speaking to the product manager, they've been proactively doing some things, like, as Mary said, to prevent people from loan stacking. They're providing reporting within their interface, and they have formed a coalition. They've pulled Klarna into it, and there was another one as well, where they have approached Experian, and they are voluntarily providing information to the credit bureaus now, voluntarily. They weren't compelled to. They decided to get one step ahead of the regulator, and they are voluntarily providing the information so that the credit scoring companies can get a broader picture of all of your commitments. So responsible lending, I'm all for that. It's the pay for your sandwich with BNPL or your pint of beer. That's just nuts. Sorry, don't agree with that one.
I know we need to go to the next question, but I will say that because I couldn't get access to my internet banking on my app the other day, that my bank should be called Laybuy, because it keeps going down on me.
We got a joke, Rick. All right, points. Crystal 1, 8. Andrew, I like all those risks that you pointed out, 6.
Question number 4. A few episodes ago, we learned that one of the reasons for a fast outflow of deposits, and as a result, few failures in the banking industry, was digital banking and social media. Big was my surprise when I saw what killed First Republic according to famous opinion maker Brett King. What killed First Republic according to him?
Having a 78-year-old founder that didn't understand how things work?
Sorry,
I'm just wondering,
wrong answer.
I'm just wondering, who is Brett King? Sorry, doesn't ring a bell.
He's a finfluencer, isn't he?
Ah,
No?
I'll have to Google him and find out.
Start with moving.
Actually, I mean, you know that I know Brett pretty well, and I'm guessing that because he always comes from the idea that banks should be purely digital, he's probably been saying something that First Republic wasn't digital enough and had too many branches. But he misses a key thing here, which is
it is the right answer, Mary.
Yeah.
Well, First Republic are dealing with the highest net worth individuals in the USA, the West Coast billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg. And it's therefore not really meant to be a purely digital bank, because a lot of people who sit in that billionaire bracket want digital access, but human support. And I just had a long debate here. I'm in Luxembourg at the moment. With
you can drive over to me.
Yeah, I could get to you very easily, Rick. In fact, I'm behind you now. Watch out. But what's interesting here, we're talking to private equity companies and to a lot of alternative fund managers. And what I just about artificial intelligence, for example, and relationship management. And what the end of the conversation is that you need to automate the mundane and augment the relationship with the individual, with the human. Which I think is spot on. And interestingly, Brett's saying things like you don't have enough digital, but Silvergate Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank were all digital banks. I mean, Silvergate and Signature were crypto digital banks. So I think Brett's off the point here. I don't agree with him.
I had a bit the same. It felt like he was just making his point of all the years before.
But I also think I was going to be a bit provocative if you were going to be agreeing with him, because when I read that article where his thesis is that what killed them.
Sorry, can I just clarify? You said thesis, not feces.
Well, yeah, it was pretty much. But yes,
it's your accent. I thought I misheard what you just said. Thesis, THESIS.
That's it. His thesis was that what killed Silicon Valley Bank was their failure to gather deposits at digital scale. That's the way that he puts it. Specifically, yeah, but he's specifically couching it in terms of failure to gather deposits at digital scale. And then he goes on to draw parallels with Apple and with Alipay. And that's where his entire argument just collapsed into nothing, because he's comparing apples and lawnmowers. He's not even, it's not even the same thing. It's not even something that's edible, because you can't compare what First Republic was, and he draws a picture of the founder banging his fist on the table and saying, we need to get more deposits. And then he's going, oh, and look what Apple did with their 4 billion users. Yes, that's the whole thing. Apple had huge community already. Alipay had huge community already. You cannot compare the two. So that, as much as Brett is a really revered guy in the fintech, I read that article and I went, nah, mate.
You're in the laptop industry or in the supercomputer industry. First Republic was in the supercomputer industry, and there are only a few.
Yeah, well, it's also going to the apples and lawnmowers discussion. As I say, First Republic is for ultra high net worth individuals, financial management. It's a very different relationship structure than just putting a few dollars into a savings account with Apple. But I was very impressed with Apple's savings launch. I mean, they're bribing people to open accounts because it's a 4.15% interest rate, 10 times more than the average in America. But to get $1 billion of deposits and 240,000 account openings in 4 days was incredible. It is incredible, but it's nothing.
How many employees do they have?
How many
employees? It's not enough to get $500 million, though, is it?
No, it isn't.
It's the power of their network and their community. It's got nothing to do with being digital at all.
But it is chalk and cheese. Exactly, Andrew. It's nothing to do with being digital. And the fact is, as I say here in Luxembourg, and whenever I talk to wealth management and private equity companies, they believe the relationship is the strongest thing. And in fact, there's a great advert which I'll send you from Michelob. Mary, you've probably seen it, which is robots against humans in sports. but it ends up with the humans drinking in the bar, and the tagline is, it's better if you can enjoy it.
Yes.
He's
And I don't
trying
know.
to get extra points there.
Well, he's already winning by a lot. I can't give him an extra point. But the one add-on I wanted to say, because it surprised me, but no, it doesn't, given what we're talking about. But like some of the banks here have been literally calling depositors that had more than $250,000 to like reassure them over the last couple of months. And I was surprised that they're calling customers, but it's to that point of the relationship thing.
Well, there's also been a call for the FDIC $250,000 protection to be raised as well.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I never thought I would be excited about that, but I am, Chris. Here we are, adulting. Okay, points. Chris 9, Andrew 8.
All right, Mary.
Yes.
Have something else to get excited about.
Okay, I'm ready.
Because I know that all of you have been waiting for this moment.
I have.
It is time for a song. I'm gonna try to remain serious here. One morning in June, some 20 years ago, I was born a rich man's son. I had everything that money could buy, but freedom I had none. I've been looking for freedom. I've been looking so long. I've been looking for freedom. Still the search goes on. I've been looking for freedom since I left my town. I've been looking for freedom. Still it can't be found. The song is from, as you all know, David Hasselhoff. And I can recommend to look for this performance during the fall of the wall back in 1989 on YouTube. My question is, who is this week's David Hasselhoff?
Bloody hell, Chris, did you even know that song was from... I didn't even know that was a song.
No. I mean, it's
Where's
actually...
the jacket with lights on it?
It's actually an adaptation of a German song called Auf der Straße nach Süden, on the road south. Oh, God. I mean, do you know that there's actually a David Hasselhoff museum in Berlin?
Oh, that's right. He was a hit there.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's a huge hit there. I mean, only Germans and Austrians like him because he's so weird. But anyway, it's in the basement of the Circus Hospital in Berlin, apparently. And I'm guessing this therefore has to do with David Hasselhoff and finance. So the only thing I could think of in my own head that will relate the two is that in the Netherlands, they have this payment system called Tikkie, and they made it successful because they have a Hoff rule, which is based on David Hasselhoff. And the rule is, what would David do? And when they were developing the app, the question they always asked is, can I do this if I'm drunk?
That's awesome.
And if you can't do it if you're drunk, then it's not easy enough, which is the Hoff rule.
But no, I'm not looking for something that gets close to David. I'm more looking for someone who's looking for freedom.
Can you
That
promise
can
not to
help.
sing any more songs, please?
I want him to do an album for
geez.
our merch.
Well,
Also
I mean-
sang by Rick.
Actually, Andrew stopped making shirts the moment I started singing, simply for a reason.
Could be a correlation. I reckon that the General Motors VP Scott Miller is David Hasselhoff this week, because he did an article about making your Knight Rider dreams come true in the future cars by incorporating ChatGPT into future generations of General Motors cars. And he was talking about just talking to your car to be able to open the garage door or to switch on or to do all the things that Yeah, actually, all the things that are very easy to do anyway.
I'm struggling with your accent this week, Andrew, because like after your mention of feces, when you meant theses, you just said nut rider when you meant night rider.
You've been watching too much Pornhub
What have
there.
you been drinking in Luxembourg?
I'm not going down the nut rider route, I'll tell you that much. It was interesting that Kit was one of the first cars that had AI built in and could do self-driving. So that was quite visionary, wasn't it? Maybe it's to do with the self-driving car that pays for itself. There was an idea by a Google engineer that self-driving cars would create their own payment system where they could save pennies and create new cars, and no one would ever be involved with a human hand.
You're getting close with the Google there.
Yeah, I'd actually read an article about that when they thought that their hypothesis was could you release a self-driving car with the instruction in the AI to maximize its profitability and to build a fleet of self-driving cars, so to hire itself out basically as an Uber, but become totally autonomous and just build an ever-increasing fleet of. Yeah, I think that there's some people at Google that were quite worried about that kind of a vision of the future, isn't there? Might have.
Well, I mean, Rick just said that we're getting close. So if we're getting close, the guy who was the godfather of artificial intelligence, Geoffrey Hinton, just left Google, and he's been a visionary for years about creating artificial intelligence, and suddenly saying it's too scary.
Yeah, you're right. 8 points for you, I think.
I was giving him 10.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Andrew might have an add-on here, so let's.
You're not supposed to be giving the points there,
you
Rick.
got 2 bonus points for Nut Driver.
You're the one who came up with 8.
Well, you always refer to 8 when you want a question. So
I know I'm drawn to that number, but I should.
Anyway, well done, Chris.
Yeah, no, definitely Geoffrey Hinton has been concerned, and his concerns seem to be echoing across the industry at the moment, with even the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, and other people chiming in to support him, saying, yeah, maybe we should start putting the brakes on this. But I've also read further notes this week about supposedly leaked internal communications from Googlers saying the genie's out the bottle, and basically the guardrails aren't there, and now that AI has got access to the internet, it's too late. You can't put it back. So interesting times that we're living in for those who want to be living in interesting times.
I mean, I think our worries are too much based on what we see in movies, and I think AI is a great opportunity to improve the world. And what was interesting is Patrick Cargill, the chief scientist for the UK government, is just leaving his role, and he said that AI is transformative as the Industrial Revolution, and we need to get ahead of the curve. And when I think about it, I saw another thing this week, which was teachers protesting in America in the 1960s about the invention of the calculator, and saying that this will stop children learning math instead of using logarithmic tables and everything else that we used to have to do for math. Well, it hasn't. And what will happen is this will just become another part of augmenting society and intelligence. It's not something that replaces humans.
Well, fingers crossed.
I'm definitely there with you, Chris. And in fact, I do a keynote where you may or may not realize that I do actually have a few formal qualifications. One of them is a certification in Foresight, which is all about how to extrapolate the past and the present into various scenarios in the future, so that we can start building a future, because true futurists never predict the future. We leave that up to celebrity shamans and people like that. It's all bogus.
And 140 character tweets.
Yeah, we don't predict.
King.
What Foresight professionals do is we extrapolate part of the infinite futures that can come about from now, and in the hope that people will pick the preferred ones, to be able to build towards. And whenever I do this keynote, I explain that the simplest way of doing my job is to not focus on a single Hollywood narrative like the dystopian future, or the horror stories, but to think of all of the genres of story that you can think about, fantasy and utopian future, romance stories, and think about how those stories can play out, and think about both the positives and the negatives and as many of the different ranges as you can in between. And AI does not only have to end up on the dystopian future path. We can achieve a wide variety of things, and we will, and humanity will prevail over time. But we've got to get people to stop just focusing on the sensationalism and the big highlight headlines of AI is coming for your job. There's 300 million jobs are going to be done away with by 2025 kind of a thing. Bullshit. There's also going to be millions created. So you want to hear that inspirational keynote? Hire me.
By when do you think we can replace the wise guy and the other guy by two computers?
Oh, you can do that already.
We can try next week.
Yeah, you can do that already.
At least ChatGPT wouldn't have the rant.
All right, points. Andrew, I'm giving you the winning round. 11 points. Chris, 10. One question left. Chris is really winning though, but you never know. You never know what could happen here.
All right. Last question. After an angry phone call from a client, I bet the advisor has consulted ChatGPT for help. This is what I got for the problem after consulting ChatGPT through Microsoft Bing, because that's how easy it became since this week. And the computer told me, there is no definite answer to what you should do in this situation, but some possible options are: seek professional help from a financial advisor, a lawyer, a therapist, depending on the cause and impact of your loss. Second, review your budget and expenses and cut down on unnecessary spending. 3, look for ways to increase your income, such as finding a new job, starting a side hustle, or selling some assets. 4, invest your remaining money wisely and diversify your portfolio to reduce risk and generate passive income. 5, learn from your mistakes and avoid repeating them in the future. And then the last, stay positive and optimistic, and don't let this setback define you or your worth. Sorry. I hope this helps. Please remember that you are not alone and that there are people who care about you and who want to support you. What happened to the client?
Was this advice given to all of the French people who have just discovered that their retirement age has increased by another 2 years or something? Because that sounds like the kind of thing that the government would be saying, or, deploying a chatbot to say, review your budget and expenses, cut down on unnecessary spending. Yeah, find a new job, increase your income. Yeah, don't worry, you have another extra couple of years to work,
Well, it was one individual client and one individual case.
Ah.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm kind of wondering, what's happened to this client. But as an aside, ChatGPT is getting very interesting. There was a survey done, published in a US newspaper this week. I don't know if you saw it, Mary, but a panel of doctors were asked to answer patient questions. And it was almost 200 questions being asked, and an assessment of the answers given by a group of medical professionals who didn't know that one of the answers was coming from ChatGPT, and it was a ChatGPT answers that won the 4 out of 5 replies to the 200 questions, because ChatGPT was far more understanding, supportive, and empathetic than the human doctors were. Lesson learned.
I didn't see that.
That's fascinating, because it kind of says to you, I've always thought that AI could not replace humans because humans have relationships. And yet if ChatGPT builds better relationships than humans can, there's
augments
a
humans,
curveball there.
Chris. It augments humans. And I can imagine the situation of a doctor who's doing like the repetitive work where we think shows some empathy. For a doctor, it's just repetitive work. For a computer, it's every time a restart. So in that respect, I can understand, but it should augment the job of a doctor. And he can do that by being more empathetic. Actually, I have a conference later this year, the Banking Scene Art Night, and the theme is augmented empathy.
Yeah, and I think the pressures on doctors might be the reason why they might give short answers rather than supportive and empathetic answers.
Mm-hmm.
But it does say that, and this is the theme of the dinner I was having here around finance, that it's all about relationships. Yet maybe artificial intelligence can build better relationships than humans can.
Did that report come out before your dinner? Because it might have then changed the response that you gave, Chris. Because clearly, if ChatGPT can be empathetic, then maybe it can replace those high net worth individuals in relationship management.
It did come out before the dinner, but I think the whole point of the dinner was that, and it goes back to what I said about the Michelob advert, which is if you can't have a dinner with a robot, can you? Because the robot doesn't have a stomach. That makes the difference.
Well, one of you is going to enjoy it.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
I reckon though that this customer that was being given this advice, they probably bought some of Chris's Bored Apes, his NFTs or crypto, or maybe they invested in SVB or something, because that looks like the kind of advice that somebody who had bought crypto and lost a lot of money would have been given.
No, and if you want to try again, it's not Chris' book either.
Well, it must be if it's financial related, someone who's lost some money.
Yes.
So who?
That what surprised me, because I'm assuming it's that story about the father who suddenly discovered that £1 million had been removed from his account, so he couldn't take his family on holiday. But when I saw the screenshots in that article where it showed £500,000 overdrawn in two separate pots, as it were, I couldn't understand that, because overdrawn implies that, and the bank was Barclays Bank, it implies that Barclays Bank had given that person £1 million overdraft facility and was able, and so he's saying his bank accounts were overdrawn. How much was in there in the first place? Or did he not have anything? And this is I'm really confused, because the screenshots don't tally up with what the story is. But at the end of the day, the bank isn't being very helpful, and it's just going frozen his accounts and saying it's busy with internal proceedings and investigations. And he must just take it easy and try and borrow some cash from people.
I think if it is that story, it's probably very similar to the stories you see about someone being charged $1 billion for their telephone bill. It's just a computer made a mistake.
But funny, it's not funny. Banks should show more empathy, but if you get as a response for being 1 million below zero,
they should use
ChatGPT is complying with its legal and regulatory obligations. We are unable to share further information. That would, that pisses people off.
It's a really mystifying story to me. I cannot understand how somebody can get £1 million overdrawn, and the bank is going, we'll get round to it. Mm-hmm. What?
You've got to realize it's computer said yes.
Yeah.
And what does Mary say?
I say that Andrew got 9 points and Chris only got 6.
Why is that?
Why?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Didn't Chris give the right answer?
Chris gave a right answer, but Andrew came in there talking about how mystifying it is.
I slid in. Don't question the points person.
As a consequence, I lost count.
I lost
count who won this episode.
Mary. I think we all know that. Chris has been the winner.
Again.
Welcome
They
back,
should-
Mary.
They should give him more wine next time in Luxembourg. Anyway, this was it for episode 21. I hope you enjoyed our show. And I cannot wait for more international fintech news coming soon. If you like our show, make sure to register on our website for the newsletter to be the first to know about new episodes. Are you a big fan? Have a look at the merchandise and get a t-shirt like the one Andrew is wearing, or a mug for your coffee, if I can get it a bit sharper. That shirt of Chris is not in the merchandise, by the way. Don't forget to subscribe on whatever channel you're on. This was the 21st episode of Fintech Uncut, and we hope to entertain you, your colleagues, your friends, your connections and followers, your cats, rabbits, dogs, pigs perhaps, and many more very soon again. Bye-bye.